Okay, so greetings, brothers and sisters. This is going to be an interesting audio. For those of you hearing this in the Journey series, it'll be the last audio in the 178th edition of the Journey series. But I made two audios yesterday where I talk a lot about spiritual aspect, the history of Sahaj Marg, and I talk about why I don't think words are important or words don't matter, why I've said that in the past and what I meant by that. And that's going to be a standalone video on my regular channel. It's going to be, just an audio video. It's 2 hours long. But for those of you watching it on the membership, it's going to be a part of the Journey series, the 179th Journey series. And those of you watching on Gratefulness Meditation, it's going to be the two audios that follow this. So I want to sort of put an end. I'll do some checkups to this, or little updates, not checkups, updates about this. And so in terms of the gathering, the Logi gathering, it represented something that I haven't experienced now in a number of years. And it was like 2 nights ago, I felt angry. And so, first of all, when you go to these gatherings, there's a condition that was there. And I don't know how much you guys are going to be able to experience it doing it on the online with Gratefulness. Like, I don't know. Like, I just can't. But I want to know what was there for people, what other people have experienced. I mean, it was something that was talked about. Chargy talked about this. And it was trying to retain your condition after the gathering. You would be in a refined spiritual state. You would be cleaned out, and you would be, just elevated and, disconnected from life. You'd still have to go back to work and deal with all your, you just wanted to stare out the window or stare at the wall and internalize your existence, like dive down deep. Chargy gave the example of these when he talked into preceptors about these whales that would dive down into the ocean and spend time there. In fact, there was a video I saw of a whale going down 3,000 feet. They had this submersible camera, and it was down 3,000 feet, and all of a sudden a whale swims by, this giant whale. That's just amazing. Saw the light. From it was so totally dark down there. But the whales are mammals. They're land creatures that have learned to adapt to the sea, and they dive down deep in the ocean. And every once in a while, they come into the surface and takes a breath. And this is how you're supposed to live your life, where you would dive down deep into your internal world. And every once in a while, you come up and you surface and you check out what's going on in the material world. But you would be, engaged in your life. You would have a family and a job, but you would be thinking and connected to God all along. And so you would be, your external interactions would come from your internal connection to God. And that's the ultimate Sahaj Marg state. And you would get into these states when you went to the gatherings. And then it was hard to come back into the world. And then after a while, you'd start engaging with things. I had these videos I had to do. And the stuff with Israel and Trump and these things. And these, you guys might have seen this, his take on Gaza Strip, which, in a couple months will disappear, but it was so egregious, right? And I was thinking about my family and some other things. And I was hoping to retain my condition and meditate before I went to bed, which I had done every night since the gathering. And I couldn't go to sleep, and I was angry, and I was frustrated, and like this stuff was coming out. And I felt bummed, like, my condition had dissipated. And I was like, it only lasted a couple days, like this boost I got from the gathering. But then, I had a headache, and I just didn't, a lot of things was just, my headache came back, and then, I could talk with my son about his going to leave, move out and things, which was part of the whole thing, which he's wanting to do himself. So that was like, bringing a close to the, the whole family thing, which, it's been a real, real bummer for me, how it all ended up with my kids and all that stuff. But it's just had to accept it. And this is, I deal with this with a comment and, some of my story, which you'll hear either in the next Journey series here or the Gratefulness Meditation video, right? These two audios that I did, one last night and one this morning. Today's Saturday, February 8th. But anyways, so was, today's Saturday. It was probably Thursday night or maybe Wednesday night. Wednesday, I think. I worked through it, and I did have a good meditation at like 3 in the morning. Like the stuff dissipated, and my condition returned, and I could feel it today. And my talks are better. Like these talks that I give, that that they're going to follow this. I feel like there's a deepening of my insights and things, and so all these things have come out. And so hopefully I'll be able to retain the condition all the way to the next gathering, and then it'll be another boost, update, whatever. And so yeah, so there's that aspect. But if I don't, it'll just be what happens, that you get sucked back into the material world, and the condition's still there, but you just can't feel it. New impressions come in and things, and it's just the problem with human life. But in general, I feel good about the whole thing. I've had a number of good meditations since then. The sitting on Tuesday was phenomenal. Oh, and I also did the sitting on Tuesday, on Wednesday. So on Wednesday night, it was early Thursday morning, probably by then, and I was really, angry and frustrated. And I did the sitting that I gave on Tuesday, and I didn't feel a thing. And when I did the sitting, it was such a powerful sitting. And so, it's just, I don't know, it's just all the ways that things are. Like at that particular time, I couldn't feel it. But on a spiritual level, it did the work. And there's just a lot of things going on. Like I said, my wife is, one of her parents is, passing away in this whole thing. And so like that's, there's just a lot of things going on. But anyways, like I said, it's been a huge step in the right direction. The cleaning I went through before the gathering and the tumultuous things that were going on, and the experience I had with the energy being in the central region and just feeling vibrations there, the base of my skull, and just, my overall condition, the sittings and the last two sittings of the gathering, the deep cleaning that was in the beginning, and then how I felt afterwards. And so, there's been some movement in the gratefulness meditation, and, we see how this unfolds. It's like a work in progress. But as I don't have any sort of real roadmap and, limited resources and whatever's going on, and, and whatever people experience themselves, which, if people leave comments about that, about the gathering and the rest of it. But the after effects of the gathering have been kind of epic. And so I want to read one Whispers of the Brighter World that I had left up here. And if it's still here, it is. Monday, November 8th, 1999, 8 a.m. Life is one, God is life, which is in everything. It emanates your body and all that moves around you, all that breathes and exists. He is in each cell of your being. Everything created has its mark. From the infinitely small to the infinitely big, open your eyes, you will all see him everywhere and in everything. The entire creation is vibrant with him. His omnipresence is one of the aspects of his manifestation. Humans create nothing, invent nothing. They are in complete illusion with regard to that. Divine creation is in perpetual change, because it is movement, action, evolution, and involution. All this is abstract, and being incarnate, you will never be able to penetrate all of its mysteries and resources. They are innumerable. Each of your breaths gives the rhythm to what is transforming itself in you and around you. It is eternal renewal, total shift, uncontrollable by human beings, and even undetectable by them in certain areas, where those who think that they know everything, or even the most enlightened seeker, cannot have access to cannot have access to this stage of evolution on Earth. Babaji. Quite a powerful message, and just a little bit of interpretation because of previous messages. What he's saying is that we think that we're doing all these things, and we are influenced by disembodied souls, by our past lives, and thinking that we created something, or how great we are. Like, this information descends into you from above or from inside, and you come up with an invention, or you write a good book, or you come up with a good joke or a brilliant thought. You're in the flow, and you think, oh, how brilliant I am, right? And it's just because you're receiving something. And that when he says this thing about people don't where is it? He's being created as his mark everywhere. Human beings create nothing, invent nothing. They are in complete illusion with regard to that. Define creation as perpetual change because it is a movement, action, evolution, and involution. And so these things have to happen, and we are, instruments of their creation. They're good things and bad things. We're instruments of this divine drama. And when we understand that, and we willfully play, we willingly go along and play our roles, life changes in the positive direction. And there's no ego, there's no me, there's no how great I am, there's no, you're just willingly playing your role or doing your part, and being used as an instrument for the betterment of evolutionary process on this planet and within yourself and for other people. And so very interesting message. And so for those of you hearing this on the Gratefullness Meditation channel, there'll be 2 following audios that will be a standalone video. For those of you listening to this on the Journey series, this will be the end of this Journey series, but there'll be this follow-up video as well. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I got some interesting comments, and I'm not going to read them in order because it worked out in a way that I didn't anticipate. I wasn't planning a thing. So one person asked me, like a person who watches the videos regularly, this isn't a hostile comment, and the person said, I've heard Paul say a few times, I'm going to make this bigger. This is something, the video's something backfire. I didn't copy the whole, I don't have a good picture. Trump hints at hacking. Something backfired. Let me go look up the real video title here. What if the terrorists backfire? Trump hints at hacking. Lemons versus Kanye. And so let me find that comment here again. And so the person says, I heard Paul say a few times words don't matter. Is this based on the meditation or an opinion? Can you please possibly do a video relating to this? It would be interesting and helpful. I've had some weird interactions over my life, and I met someone who told someone to kill themselves, and the person did it. And for some reason, I remember that conversation for a few years, like it was important or something. And 5 years later, the same thing happened again. Someone said to a person who kept talking about suicide, why don't you make the decision already? And the person did make the choice and went and killed himself. So this is why I'm torn between words matter and here I had to do this in a 2-part. Terms of so I'm torn between the words matter and not mattering in terms of the system and meditation. I understand this is based off some scar of the person who was suicidal and not the person's fault who said the words. Like, should those people feel bad? Thanks for the videos, bro. Well, of course you should feel bad. Like, the reason you don't say that. So I was in a similar situation, right? Where my ex and my daughter would put out the idea of suicide as a way to get what they wanted. And I didn't think my ex was legitimately suicidal, nor was my daughter at the time of her doing this, but the seeds were planted. This is going to relate to a whole bunch of stuff. So it's I think it's going to be very interesting. And there's a couple of great comments, one about my daughter that I'm going to include here, so it's all kind of working out. The one about my daughter came before. It was kind of a really effed up comment, and then I was going to talk about that. Maybe I didn't know whether it was or not. But then I got another comment, and I'll read that second, and I'll go to the other comment last. But I'm reading these in the reverse order that I read them. So understand that this thing with words mattering is the theme that these other comments that I had already copied would play into. So it's kind of interesting for me because I didn't plan this way. So my daughter was on LSD and other drugs, hallucinogenics, when she committed suicide, which I didn't understand. She had learned to cut herself because my ex had learned to do that. My ex was self-abusive, and when we used to have arguments, I had to go hide all the nights, right? Like immediately when we'd have an argument, I could see that she was about to lose it. I had to go hide all the knives so she wouldn't. And she didn't really do it. Like she pretended to cut herself. Like she didn't really bleed. My daughter ended up cutting herself with a razor. She had learned this from my ex. So this is a whole thing, right? It's a whole mess. And, some of it might be biological and social training. And then there's just these copycat behaviors, right? Your kids will do what you do. And so I was in a situation where they would threaten self harm or threaten to kill themselves. And at times I wanted to say, why don't you just go do it? Because I, was calling their bluff, right? Or I would be calling their bluff because I didn't believe they were going to do it. I thought they were just doing it to be manipulative. But you can't say that. Like, at least I don't think you can say that. People do say it, and I'm not one of them. I wouldn't say that because I know if they ended up doing it, I would carry around all the guilt and burden and shame or whatever from it, right? I mean, my ex used to say, you make me feel suicidal. You make me want to kill myself. And that's bad enough, right? Like, dropping that shit on somebody else. I was far from perfect, but, I didn't deserve that because what I was saying, see, what this person says about some scars is true because people have said this to me. People have left comments saying, I want you to kill yourself. I want you to go kill yourself or something like this, right? Number of times. People say it to each other all the time. And sometimes people take them up on that. But the persons that take them up on that are suicidal already. They already are contemplating, or it's a part of their samskaric pattern. It's definitely a part of their samskaric pattern if they do it. So it's not the words that make it do it, but the words don't help, right? And the person who says the words is going to feel like a piece of shit and should because, you're always going to feel some remorse in things that you say to people. There always should be some regret for the things you say to hurt other people. Over my lifetime, I've said many things that hurt other people. And there's always some sense of regret. And as you get older, you think back on some of the things you said. And, regardless of what the circumstances were, I mean, the other person could be being a complete piece of shit to you. And you could be totally worn out and just beat down and, by a shitty relationship. Or just feeling bad by, your own circumstances in your life. And you lash out at somebody else because you get angry. And there always should be some remorse. It's not the words, though. It's the energy behind the words. Like there's some words that carry a zinger with them. And so the words themselves don't mean anything, right? People say I love you all the time. There's people say they love me in the comments. And I read the words, but I don't feel the love. The energy of love, you feel the energy of love, the condition of love. And you can feel loved by people. But sometimes you could love a person and they can't feel your love. They're blocked. They can't feel it, whatever it is. You can give somebody a gift or do something nice for somebody and they feel gratitude, happiness, and they say that they love you, but it's predicated on you doing something nice for them, right? You do something bad, 10 minutes later, they say they hate you. So, words are, it's only the energy and what the person's feeling behind it because people are lying all the time. And sometimes they're saying love when they mean something else, right? Some other kind of condition, right? Love is something that, you feel it in your heart. I'm sure I felt love for my parents when I was a kid, just naturally, like all kids do. Whatever I felt, my heart for my parents. But there was only 2 times I felt love for them. When I was, both times happened when I was 14 years old. The first time, and they were probably within a month or 2 of each other. It was definitely in a month or 2 of each other because I had soccer practice sometime either before school started or the first or second week of school. I was a freshman in high school. And my mom got up and made me breakfast, and I had an early Saturday practice for the high school team, freshman soccer or whatever it was. And I looked at my mom. She was making breakfast. She was probably like, I don't want to say grumpy, but she wasn't happy. She wasn't exuding love. And I was like, oh my gosh, she does all kinds of things for me. Like felt like all the work my mom had put in. And like love beamed up in my heart. I felt love for her. Like I looked at her and I loved her. I felt love for her. Of course, I didn't say anything because I was just some stupid high school kid, And it would have been weird. I said, hey, Ma, I love you. It was like she would have been like dropped dead or whatever. And so, but I felt it. Like I felt the love. I felt like, oh, like she's done a lot of things. Love is service, right? They have these different love languages, and there's love as gifts or material, whatever it is. Love as quality time. Love as physical touch. There's I think there's 5 love languages. I don't say that is the model, but there's some merit to it, right? In this case, it was service. And the second time was a couple weeks later, a month later. My mom went to visit my grandmother, who lived to 99, and I had built a zip line with one of my friends, and it was like completely unsafe. Like, we had built this fort. We built this platform out in the woods. There's some woods. This kid's grandfather, owned this land behind our house, and a lot of it had been built. The development we lived in, the suburb, with the cul-de-sac I lived on, and there were some woods behind the house. And we built this. He had all this leftover lumber, and we built this cool platform. And there was a floor that we found, and there was a nice floor. And then we put some boards above the floor, about 5 feet above the floor. We were going to put some kind of roof on it, but we ran out of wood, and it was about 30 feet off the ground. And we stood on these boards, and we hung this wire that we ran the zip line, and the thing sagged because I weighed like 100 pounds. Like, I was 5 foot, 100 pounds, like maybe less than that. And the other kid was like a year or two younger than me, so he was, even lighter. So we couldn't get enough torque on the wire to make it straight. So it sagged. And there's this pulley, with 2 handles on either side. And we were going down this fucking wire. And we both went once, and then I went to go a second time. And I jumped because the first time I landed over a creek. I didn't have enough momentum, and I kind of sprained my ankle. So I wanted to go a little bit farther. I wanted a little bit more, to go farther down the line, because the things, whatever. And so I pushed off, and I woke up in the hospital. My dad was there, and he couldn't exhibit any real emotion or feeling or, whatever, like in terms of anything. But my mom was gone, and he was alone. He had to deal with it. He found me in the woods, or my friend went and got him. And he, rode with me to the hospital or whatever. I don't know. I was out for like 12 hours, so. And he, I could feel like he loved me. I'm like, my guy, he was freaked out. Like, we reached a level of depth in his emotional, feeling type of situation. He thought I was going to die, and he freaked out. Like, he, exhibited some care for me, right? It was a momentary thing, like you see at a funeral or a wedding, and, you lose somebody, and all of a sudden, all the superficial bullshit fades. And it was one of those moments, right? To give you an example, years later, my mom sent me some information that my dad had taken out some life insurance. And, my family and I was struggling financially, and I thought, she made it sound like there might have been some money involved, right? And so, I don't know anything about that kind of stuff. I'm not good at it, and I'm not good at figuring it out. And I eventually called, she sent me the policy. I was trying to understand what it was. And my dad had taken out a life insurance policy on me for 10 grand. And it was a short-term life policy. And I think he must have been thinking that I was doing drugs and I was going to die. So he he fucking bet that I was gonna die. Like, he was almost like he was wagering, like he was taking an office pool or some shit. Like, he took, well, I think my son might die, and he, like, almost, he was invested in the chance that might happen, which is a totally big fuck you. And I would have rather not known about it. I mean, it's funny to me now, but at the time, I thought there might be some money. Something that he had done that was, I don't know when my mom told me about this, but I think it must have been after he died. She would die a year later or something. She sent me the stuff, and she found all these documents. And what he had done was he was, this was years and years ago when I was in high school. So 10 grand was probably about what, I don't know, 25 grand would be now, or 30 grand. And that he took out some money that in case that I die, that he would get 10 grand. Like, my dad would be the beneficiary of my death, right? Which is fucked, right? In different ways. So, whatever happened that day when I fell out of the tree, he penetrated to a deeper level of concern or feeling. And I felt it, right? In words, he didn't say I love you. I don't know if maybe he did, right? I don't, But saying I love you, people say it all the time, and oftentimes it doesn't mean anything. When I feel love for my wife, or talk about love and these things, it wells up in my heart, right? Some welling up in my heart. This happened when I got the preceptor sittings from the master of the Sahaj Marg system. It was I went through this deep cleaning. I got food poisoning. I went through this trip from hell in India. And I was going to leave. I was supposed to be made a preceptor, but I never went and talked to the master about it. I was too struggling with everything. And I went to say goodbye to him. He said, weren't you supposed to come talk to me about being made a preceptor? And I was like, yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to talk to you. I thought you called me in or whatever. And what I was, kind of already just limping back to America. And in the preceptor sittings, there was deep cleaning. And I had senior preceptors who had been, had moved higher up in their spiritual capabilities in terms of, giving these deep, intense cleanings. They had been trained how to do deeper cleanings. And I had 3 individual sittings with the master of the system. And the last one, I went to his house, and, I was sitting across from him. You sit 5 to 8 feet apart, and you face the other person, you close your eyes, you meditate. And the force of his will in cleaning me, like I had the worst thoughts I've had in my life, like things that I would never even imagine thinking about, just all this, and it was like being pulled out of me, like the scene of the tornado in the Wizard of Oz, like all that, energy was like all those thoughts were just flying out of me, and some feelings and things. And I was like, oh my God, this is intense. Like and I could feel like a vacuum of his will pulling all this shit out of me. And then at the end of that, I thought about my mom, and like I got real I felt love for her. I felt real, love for her. There's a whole thing about having a mom who's, my mom was religious. She prayed for me and my siblings, and my brother specifically became a practitioner of the system, and we both attributed some of that to my mom's prayers. So he's giving me the sitting, and just, after all this cleaning, and I just felt all this love, there's this energy, like they could charge these spiritual points. And it was a significant spiritual experience. I mean, it was, something that was profound. And I had this feelings of love and gratitude for my mom. And when I got back home, I called her. We didn't get along. I mean, whatever. I didn't really like my mom very much in terms of, my parents were incompetent. Like I didn't hate them or dislike them, but I disliked them. I didn't respect them as parents and people or whatever. But I called her, and she started the meditation, and like a year or two later, my brother said, we were at a gathering with Master Charji, and my mom was there. And she came to the gathering. She was a devout Catholic, but she was enjoying the meditation. And he said, you can introduce Mom. My dad was there as well. And so I did, and my brother said, why don't you introduce our mom to Master Charji? So Master Charji's coming out to give group meditation. And Charji came out, and he looked at me, and his eyes were like really soft. And he was a very big guy and gruff. Like he would sound kind of gruff, and Romano G, whatever he, called me or whatever. And he was just really loving. Like I could feel the, love emanating out of his being. And my mom was sitting there really soft and just, my mom was like, it was just a spiritual moment. And my mom, who, she got into the meditation, she liked it, but it wasn't her thing. She was really always still a Catholic. But she looked at Charji, and I said, this is my mother, Rita Romano. My brothers and because my brother was, was waiting at the golf cart. He was going to drive Charji to the tent where we was going to have group meditation. It was a big tent. There was, 500 to 1,000 people there that were going to meditate. So I said, Master, this is this is my mom, my brothers and my mom, Rita Romano. And my mom said, thank you for this wonderful gift of being able to be here. And she said it in a way like it was, it was like a different level of conversation. Like just, she was looked so grateful, and like, she was, I don't know what she thought about the master, but you could feel the energy. And he looked at me and said, thank you for the gift of your 2 fine sons, which was like a big deal because Charji didn't hand out compliments like that. He wasn't, at least as far as I was concerned. And so, and there was just this energy. And I was like, wow, what the fuck just happened? And there was a young Indian guy there, turned out to be really nice, and he came up to me like 3 or 4 years later. And he said, I was there when you introduced your mom to Chargy. He said that was like a profound moment for me. I just, he said whatever he felt he witnessed. He's like, I think he liberated your mom then, right? And so I felt this energy. And so, years went by and I saw my dad. He was like a walking skeleton. I've been talking to my wife about this stuff because she has a parent that's dying. And, this medical system was keeping my dad alive, even though anything that resembled my dad as a human being and everything that he enjoyed doing, which was at that point eating and watching TV, he was blind and he couldn't eat. He had really bad irritable bowel syndrome, so he was just wasting away. He was like a human skeleton. But anyways, years later, I was in India. My dad passed away, and my brother was down there with her. He was kind of taking care of her. She kind of had mixed feelings about that. She said, like, sometimes he's a help, and sometimes he's not so much of a help. Like, she's, but anyways, so I found out my mom died, and there was a gathering going on for people who spoke Spanish, Spanish-speaking people, or whatever it was. Kind of a Latin America gathering. And my mom, she lived in Boca Raton, Florida, and there was these wonderful Haitian women that were there. This one woman named Marie something. I know her last name. I'm not going to say it, but I would mispronounce it anyway. And they were the sweetest ladies. And they would come up to me at gatherings and say, "Oh, your mom's so wonderful." She would come over to their house and meditate. And she said, "Oh, your mom's such a beautiful, saintly woman." My mom used to go to prayer meetings with these nuns and people and bring them to our house. And I went with her when I was like 13 years old. Then I started smoking pot and, falling off of zip lines and shit like that. And so, when I got older and I kind of rebelled against all that stuff and I didn't think about God for years. And my mom was going to this woman's house, but she eventually, couldn't go to the group meditation and go to church. And she was, getting older, so she stopped going. But she did the meditation for a number of years. And there's this gathering going on, and these women come up to me. They're there. They're these Haitian women from Boca Raton. They're there at this Latin American gathering, whatever it was, right? This it was mostly Spanish-speaking people. They're all in India because Chargy couldn't travel anymore. And they came up, and there was the only two people in the whole mission that would know my mom. They were the only few people who had interactions with my mom, other than me and my brother. And they just happened to be there when I found out my mom died, the day my mom died. And they just happened to walk by me at this big ashram. It was 20 acres. And I didn't even know they were there. And they came up to me and said, "We just heard about your mom passing," which I don't even know how they did, unless my brother told them. And they said, she was just a wonderful woman. And they were just exuding this, this very caring energy and things like this. So, this is what I'm talking about. Words are words, and you can say "I love you" or "I care about you," but you can feel, you could feel something different, right? It's what the energy behind the words is, or even when someone says "I hate you" or things like that, is something else behind those words, right? There's something else going on, like people don't express the truth of what they're feeling and why they're saying the things to you. Like you don't say, "My boss just chewed me out at work, and I'm, struggling from financial pressure." And so, and then you come home and your kid does something wrong and you yell at him. And the kid has no idea why you're, so mad, right? Because you haven't expressed these things and you're not even, aware of them. You're carrying around these things. People poison each other. They give each other these, these energetic whammies where they say hostile things and hateful things. And, you don't know what's going on with them or why they're saying it. That's why I say words don't matter. It's the feeling and energy behind the words, with the words. It's also what's going on with the person receiving the words, right? Why they're receiving the words and what's going on with them in terms of their samskaras and all these things. There's a complex workings. When people say words matter, that became some kind of liberal rallying call. And I would say, there's so much bullshit and people talking so much shit on the internet. There's too many words. And most of them don't mean shit because most people are lying or don't even know they're lying about what they really feel or think about something. So their words are worthless. Their words are meaningless. They speak too many just stupid words that aren't the truth of what they're feeling and why they're feeling it and why they're saying the things they're saying. There's no honesty behind them. There's no feeling. There's no energy. People saying they love you, people saying "I love you" to people. and never ever really feeling love, right? It's just, I mean, it's something that it becomes hollow if there's no feeling behind it. I mean, when love wells up inside of you for people, when you see somebody that you love and you haven't seen them all day or whatever, or for a longer period of time, if you get separated, separation makes the heart grow fonder. And so, this is kind of what I was meaning by that. So in that, there's a couple comments I want to get to, which, that will kind of expand on that. So the first comment is this. This is to Trumpers are still in denial after Trump's asinine, moronic, evil Gaza plan. And this person says, about me, this is somebody that's obviously just a Trumper that showed up. Wonder what this guy has hidden in his closet. Well, eventually it will be exposed, not just to play treasonous MSN, but the paid opposition with these podcast clowns here spilling more BS and creating more toxic brainwashing with their channels. Hopefully every one of you will be exposed and handled legally. Now that's some kind of a Trumper threat, right? Because, she's claiming, this person, that I am some kind of a paid shill, right? Exposed to pay to play treasonous MSN, but the paid opposition. She's saying that I'm paid opposition to say these things about Trump. And anybody who watches my videos know that I'm not a Democrat. I'm not pro-Democrat. I wasn't pro-Biden. And I, all the stuff. But this person just shows up and accuses me of being this kind of person, right? But the, 3,000 to 5,000 people that are going to watch my videos and watch this video, the video that she's commenting on, I mean, that's the only effect it has. My opinion of Trump is limited to those people who, the majority of them already are anti-Trumpers. The majority of people watch my stuff don't like Trump already. So it has zero effect in changing their minds. They weren't going to be pro-Trumper, and even if they were, he ain't running for president again. So the effect of my videos is negligible. In terms of me saying anything about anybody, it's, might be entertaining, it might be interesting, it might be insightful for people, but it isn't going to move the needle. Trump's going to fucking destroy this country, right? And, I believe that it needs to be destroyed. I believe he's, in a sense, doing God's work. So I'm cool with it. But, the dishonesty I'm not cool with, right? And all this stuff these people say and all this Trumpers or whatever, the denial and all the rest of this stuff. And so, think about what's going on with this person. It's a picture of a woman and it says user something or other. So, it may or may not be a woman. But the person's a Trumper. And, the reaction to me, I mean, just destroying Trump on this ridiculous Israeli, this Gaza plan, it's just so silly. No one with half a brain could ever make any kind of a case of it being a good thing. I mean, even if it was like a real plan, I mean, if it was something that was, it's not professionally done. It's something where he's just talking off the cuff about something that's, a disaster. And his administration immediately had to backtrack. And Israel's immediately taken advantage of his plan and trying to, ethnically cleanse the country and ship all the Palestinian people out so they can occupy the Gaza Strip and all its resources and all its value. And that's been the goal all along. That's the whole thing behind all of these things, right? And so for this person to make it about me, right? Like this is, there are real people suffering. And so, these words are ridiculous. This person has no credibility as a human being because they've bought into the Trumper bullshit and they're trying to, dismiss anybody who says anything against him, right? And so, what do these words have? Like there's words, this person saying that I have skeletons in my closet and that I will be, not only that I will, here, let me pull this back up here. That hopefully every one of you will be exposed and handled legally. You want me to go to jail for talking badly about Trump? This is my First Amendment right. I have a right to express my opinions here, right? And so that's how she wants to deal with it. She thinks I should be legally, whatever legally means, that somehow, and there's 10 exclamation points, but they're like emojis. I don't know how she managed to do that. But, this is what I'm talking about. Like, these words are useless. Like, what, why are you even talking? Like, there's nothing that you're just the meaningless, like, drivel. Like, it could be in a foreign language, just a person, it's gibberish. Like, you're just spitting gibberish. So that was the second comment I got. There was actually a third comment, a last comment that I received that I didn't notice here. This guy said, "Dude, I can tell you're not a basketball guy. LeBron is the king if whiners." He meant of whiners. Doesn't almost every play speak about something you know about. Well, I played basketball for a number of years. My brother was an excellent basketball player. My nephews all played college basketball. I could have redshirted for my college basketball team. And I kind of did redshirt, but ended up not, it didn't really play out because I had to work and do different things, right? But, I used to play basketball all the time. And so it's not something like I wear as a badge of honor. It was just something I did. And it helped me, learn different things, working on my game and learning, even soccer did this for me and things like this, learning to, train and, push myself and, get better at something. And then there was other benefits to basketball. And it could have been something else, but it just happened to be basketball. And so I know about it. Like, I know a lot about it, like just on different levels of the thing. And it's not like, oh, wow, it's like I'm all proud of that shit. It's something that's really of my past, right? But what I was talking about was Luka Doncic whining, which he does like all the time about the officials and other things. And I also had said LeBron does the same thing in a previous video, but that's not what I was talking about because I was talking about why the Mavericks were upset with him because he had a couple of meltdowns. And I've talked about these various players who have meltdowns. And, I understand it too because when you're playing a game and it's very competitive and you get dehydrated and you're tired, you sometimes lose it. You start yelling and you swear and you pick fights. And I mean, this is stuff that we all experienced in sports. But Luka Doncic is doing it to such an extent that it's a problem. Like Draymond Green does it and LeBron does it. But again, these are meaningless words because this guy is accusing me of knowing nothing about basketball, and I'm not a basketball guy. I was, good at basketball. I could, dunk multiple ways. I was in dunk contests and things like this. I could shoot. I was fast, and I was, I was a good basketball player. And I knew I knew things about basketball because I played basketball. And so again, like these are what benefit does this have? The person knows nothing about me, and based in them thinking that LeBron's a bigger whiner than Luka, and getting emotionally butthurt and just saying some stuff like this. I mean, why leave a comment like this? Like, what value does this have? Because I don't care about it. Like, me being a basketball guy or not a basketball guy, I don't care about it either way. And so this was the first comment, though. This is very personal towards me. The person brings up my daughter's suicide. I got interrupted. I have to pull this back up. It's sad for me to see that you have so much attachment to a spiritual system than to your own daughter taking her life. Now, this is quite a sentence to start a comment to someone you don't know on YouTube. Like, this person is a fucked up thing. Like, you're always going to tell this is going to be a fucked up thing. This is to the Trumpers. Still, Trumpers still in denial after Trump's asinine, moronic, evil Gaza plan. So the comment is, this person might be a Trumper or whatever their hostility is towards me, right? Because it's a hostile comment. So I'm going to read the whole thing and then I'm going to dissect it. It's sad for me to see that you have so much attachment to a spiritual system, then you have so much attachment, I think so much more attachment to a spiritual system than to your own daughter taking her life. You invest more emotion into whining about the spiritual system getting corrupted than actually put into your own healing. My brother, I guess we're brothers now. My brother, this is something that truly gets under my skin about you. Your spiritual arrogance is off the charts in this respect. You have very little compassion to yourself and the failed relationship that you had with your own child To me, this is disheartening, and no spiritual system on earth will help you see how you neglect her spirit even after she's dead. It's sad, man. I don't vibe with your constant bitching either. It's the revelations of injustice in the whole that I tune in for. Your personal opinions and how you throw everyone under the bus is not heartful or compassionate. You fail to live what you claim to preach. I know you can't see it. Most narcissistic personality types can't. You're still lucky to still be here, Paul. You'll never be my. It says you'll leave. They spelled a few words. If you're going to drop something like this, you might as well spell check it, right? You'll leave be my guru though, and it should be you'll never be my guru though. So let me go through this because it's quite a lot of different things here. This was the first comment, and it was before I was going to do this whole thing on words, but these are just great examples. Because the general energy behind this comment is hostile. It's written like this is some sort of an intervention, and the person's trying to help me out. But this kind of comment, the only thing it could do would possibly hurt my feelings or make me feel bad or depress me or make me feel angry or hostile. That's the only reaction a person could have to this comment that would evoke something. It wouldn't evoke, oh my God, you're so insightful. Thanks, man, for this wonderful comment. I'm going to rethink my life, right? That would never happen. It wouldn't happen from me. And because it's so off base anyway, it's not reality based, but it's not going to happen from anybody. So this is a hostile comment meant to make me feel bad, right? And you could say what kind of a piece of shit I am, and this person saying that I have a narcissistic personality disorder, but I would never say something like this to anybody, even the worst person in the world. I would never use somebody's child committing suicide as a weapon against them, right? In this capacity, especially somebody who's a total stranger. Because, nothing that, and I said this before, like I don't, I'm not hurt by this. It doesn't make it worse. My daughter's suicide, your opinion about it or anybody's opinion or anything anybody says about it isn't going to make it worse or make it better. Like when I made the video saying my daughter committed suicide, I said, please don't comment because, people will comment in 6 months and say, I'm so sorry to hear your daughter commit suicide. It's just going to remind me. Like, if I talk about it in like this video, if somebody comments 2 weeks from now and I don't even remember this video and I don't remember talking about it, it just reminds me of the thing. So, but that's still, it's not going to make it worse or better. Your compassion, your prayers, your, all these things. I mean, prayers always help on a spiritual level. But in terms of just the suckiness of my daughter committing suicide and everything that happened before that, like all the difficulties with her, all the things with my family, all those things, right? It's not going to make it better or worse. Words aren't going to help that in any capacity, right? Your words, whether they're positive or negative, they're not going to make it go away. It's a sucky thing, and it's just always going to be sucky. And so let's start from the beginning. It's sad for me to see you have so much, it should say more attachment to a spiritual system than you do to your own daughter taking her life. And I think this person is saying that because I talk about the spiritual system a lot, and I don't talk about my daughter's suicide at all. And so, I mean, I would say that, and I don't know, how, reality-based this is on this person. I mean, they're not being honest. See, if this person was going to be honest, they would say why they're upset with me, right? Why they are mad at me, not because of things I said or things that irritate them. Because when you drop something like this, it comes from a deep hostile place where you're, taking something that is hurtful to me, my daughter's suicide, my daughter's, the whole failure there, all of it, and to, blame me to whatever extent and bring up the failed relationship and these things. This is something to really inflict pain, right? And so what's going on with this person? Did I say something that they are Trumper? Did I say something that they took personally? I insulted them without it being a personal insult because they identify with the person I was making fun of or mocking, the person that worships Trump or some other thing. If they left a comment sometime It was a hostile comment. I came back at them. And even though they're all I know is their comment. I mean, it could be a bot generated comment for all I know. They're butthurt about it and they want to inflict pain on me. This goes on all over the internet. But if the person was going to be honest, they'd say why this bothers them. Like, why would you leave such a piece of shit comment? You could just turn off my videos, right? You make it very clear I don't want this. This is pushing past the boundary where I'm saying I don't have a complaint department here. If you have complaints, just stop watching. Like, I'm not here for your critique or your criticism because, I've explained this over and over again. And it's a healthy boundary. It's a boundary that I should have because I'm not a garbage can for you to dump your psychological and emotional hurt and pain and, hatred and whatever it is, right? Any of these negative things, right? You can, dump it somewhere else. I'm not here to be your whipping boy or whatever. And people think that they can just drop this stuff anonymously on people, cowardly people who drop this stuff anonymously on people on the internet, drop their filth and their anger and their hatred and their whatever it is on other people. And so, I mean, it's hard to understand where this is coming from in terms of the person's reaction, but really how they made this conclusion. It's sad for me to see that you have so much more attachment to your spiritual system than to your own daughter taking her life. Well, they're completely different things, right? And so you deal with something like this. And I want to get into my whole family thing, but you deal with disappointment and the pain is far beyond my daughter's suicide, which I'll get into in a moment, right? But the one thing that this person can't feel or understand is the quality of my heart, right? The quality of my heart's ability to feel pain. So a person that hates me a lot worse than this person would be my ex-wife. I think my ex-wife probably hates me more than anybody else or, demonizes me or does whatever, uses me as some, has created a fictional version of me that, whatever, some villainous version. And even my ex-wife used to say, to my kids and other people, that I had a difficult personality, but you would not find anybody with a softer heart than mine. And she was a preceptor and a meditator, and we can feel the condition of other people's hearts. And so that was a legitimate statement on her part, that I have a soft heart, which I do. And I feel other people's pain. And I've said, I'm an empath that doesn't care about other people, on an egotistical level and a conscious level, but I feel other people's pain. And I can feel all these things, even the things that I'm covering, and I've learned to live with it. Like I'm able to feel all these different aspects of this pain. And so the pain that I feel for my daughter Anna's, not only her suicide, but her complete failure as a person. And, all the things that my family had to do with that and all of the rest of it. And that my soul, this was to me part of a plan. It goes far beyond, just this event being some random event of cause and effect, right? This is something that I had to endure. So if I was really going to be upset, I'd be upset with God or my soul for making me experience something like this, right? My daughter's suicide. But either way, I'm not going to talk about it a lot because there's nothing to talk about. Like I mention it from time to time. And my heart's feeling about it, you'll never be able to experience. The pain that I felt. And, long before she committed suicide. All the times I worried about her. And, I'm not a worrier. And I worried about her all the time. And I couldn't conceive of her having any kind of a life. As she got older and into her teens, the more she just descended into, being a horrible person. And being someone I couldn't see her sustain a relationship. I couldn't see her sustain a job. Like she had resistance with authority. And she was so impulsive and she was so, all these ways that like she was so low functioning. And I'm like, how is she going to have a life? I prayed about it. She got, she did the meditation for a while and got better. But I was like concerned that she wasn't going to be able to exist as an adult. Like she wasn't going to be able to, she was going to be in the system somehow. She eventually got locked in. She was put on a psychiatric hold when she moved to where my ex was after we got back from India, after she cut herself and her brother walked in and found her bleeding all over these things. I mean, all the experience of her self-harm and all the stuff that she did, how manipulative she was, how hateful she was, how unfair she was, all the ways that she was difficult, and, all the things that went with it, right? And mental illness and, the dysfunctional aspects of our family. It's more than one little, bit of thing that some piece of shit can drop a comment like this without possibly knowing all the things that I went through and all the things you endure when one of your loved ones, especially one of your kids, turns out this way, right? And so, there's nothing really for me to say other than the things I've said in Journey series. I'm not going to talk about every day, right? Life moves on. You have to deal with things. I've dealt with it the best I can, right? And so, like, what a piece of shit for writing this thing to me. Like, and again, I'm not saying this out of some sense of this that personally hurt me, but it's fucked up that somebody would write something like this, like, and be so self-unaware that they would drop something like this in a comment in YouTube, and the words don't matter because the person doesn't know shit. Like, the words they're saying, they're not true. They're not anything. They don't make me, they're not, I'm not getting defensive about it or whatever. But the energy behind it, the fucked up reasoning for it, the energy that you feel, and there's this kind of shit all over social media, and it's fundamentally dishonest. So the other piece to it, to answer the first line of this thing, the spiritual system, the Sahaj Marg spiritual system, I believe, is what's supposed to save humanity. I don't know if it's done right now. It could be, right? I don't know. It might be done because of what's happened with this guy Dodgy. It's still working, so there's hope for it. But the transformation that I had as a person and the condition of my heart that got better, because, when I was younger, I would say things to people and I could feel that I hurt their hearts. Back in my college days when I was real punk and an asshole, and then, arguments and things, saying things to my ex and things like this, right? I could feel the pain that I caused the other person, to some extent. And it isn't, again, the words, it was the energy behind it, right? Like you zing people with the, you're zapping them. It's like the words are a delivery system for the energy. The words are a delivery system for, like the spiritual master of the system might say something that would seem insulting to you, but it would be invoking a cleaning. And, I really can't get into how that would work, but it would evoke something being pulled out of your internal system, and the master of the system would work on the spiritual plane to help remove that samskara. And, I know a lot about that I couldn't talk about here. It would take a whole, and it wouldn't be helpful to anybody because it's something that you have to be trained to do or whatever, right? But that's something where, the words actually are positive even though they seem like they would be negative, right? But either way, the spiritual system is still working in the Gratefulness meditation. And I'm talking about it in terms of how it works, right? Not in terms of being somebody's guru, which we'll get to at the end of this person's ridiculous comment here, right? But the two things, me talking about my spiritual system and how great it is, and, how much of a disaster it is that it's been compromised, is because of all these reasons. But to imply that I care more about the spiritual system than my daughter's suicide is like silly. They're not even on the same plane. They're two entirely different things. But what I would say is my spiritual system, without it, I would have broken me. And I think this person wants me to be broken. I mean, this is what they're saying, that I should have broken down and just fallen apart over her suicide, which, I couldn't do. Like, it's just something I couldn't do. But it was long before that was the issue. But it was the spiritual system and the cleaning and the knowledge and understanding that these things, you have to go through things like this. Miseries is divine blessings as a part of it that helped me endure the pain of my daughter's, the whole thing. Her suicide's just a piece of it. And then it says, you invest more emotion into whining about the spiritual system getting corrupt than you actually put into your own healing. And so how do you evaluate that? Like, what are you saying? What is this person saying about my own healing based in shit I say in the YouTube videos, right? Like, they have no idea what's gone on inside me. Again, you're evaluating my words and not the internal process that I've gone through with all of these things, right? Which I've been very clear about in the Journey series. Let me find the comment again here. So truly gets, it says, you invest more emotion into whining about your spiritual system getting corrupt than you actually put into your own healing. My brother, calling me a brother at this point, right? You're making it like this is you're reaching out with your wisdom and your insight. And it's, this is just an act of hostility. My brother, this is something that you truly gets under my skin about you. Why does it get under your skin? Like, why would this bother you? Like, what does it mean it gets under your skin? Like, what emotions are you feeling that you're projecting this bullshit on me about your own feelings about this thing? Like, you're wrong about it. And is this, I mean, what does this have to do with that you're upset at me over these things and you want to drop some kind of emotionally loaded bomb using my daughter's suicide as a weapon to somehow hurt my feelings and make me feel bad about myself? Like, this is, you being an absolute dishonest piece of shit, right? You can watch characters on TV and get upset at them, angry at them, right? Whatever they're being. And what is it, why is that? Why am I angry? Like, this is what I would ask. Why do I feel angry about something like this? If I felt anger towards Trump, where's the anger coming from? What's the anger on my part? What's the emotional reaction? Why am I having this emotional reaction towards something going on outside of me that has zero to do with me, right? Like, why does this person bother me? If somebody irritated me, I would turn them off because I don't want to feel irritated. But the irritation inside me is my irritation. If I felt hatred, which I don't feel anymore, but I used to, it's been cleaned out by this wonderful system, the Sahaj Marg meditation system that cleans such things out. The hatred is inside of me. It's my hatred. The object of the hate is somebody else. But if that object is always going to change because the hatred is inside. There'll always be somebody that you'll hate, some group of people or something, because your hatred needs an object for its hatred. So you have to go in and find out what's going on inside of you. If the person listened to me, they would, in terms of these things, they would think about it that way. That's something that I say that has incredible value that people don't really appreciate. Find where this thing's coming from in yourself and remove it. That's the Sahaj Marg system. It says, my brother, this is something that truly gets under my skin about you. Your spiritual arrogance is off the charts. What does that even mean, spiritual arrogance? Like, spirituality is your interconnection to God. There's no arrogance. In fact, it's something that's humility. You're saying that, like, some kind of me being a poser, and then that's not spiritual ignorance. That's being a poser. My brother, this is something that truly gets under my skin about you. Your spiritual arrogance is off the charts in this respect. You give very little compassion to yourself and the failed relationship that you had with your own child. So I've said this before. I don't believe in self-love and self-compassion. I believe in redemption when you make mistakes, but the mistakes that you made is when you go off your spiritual path, when you deviate from your soul's path. And that's, that is whatever it is, right? But I don't believe in love and compassion for yourself because those don't exist. Love is something you give to other people. Compassion is something you have for other people, right? This person's trying to make this like they're delivering some hired message and they can see through me and my bullshit, right? So, that's where the problem is. But the more important part of that sentence is you give very little compassion to yourself and the failed relationship you had with your own child. So I've had failed relationships with all my children. And, some of it could be attributed to my inabilities, right? Some of it is, my lack of social skills. Some of it is just the circumstances. But it's very painful. And I've just gotten some news that's even, that's all about these things. And this person might be responding to all that, right? And so if the person listens to my journey series and I've told this story, I mean, there's nothing more that I can do than tell the story and, talk about whatever, the circumstances that were involved in this. But years ago, I worked in a treatment center. And there was this kid, and he was, really messed up. And I don't want to go through the whole story because I've told it a bunch of times, and I'm already an hour into this thing. And the kid's mom sexually abused him. He was completely fucked. He was always going to be in an institution. And, I used to do the 9 p.m. prayer. I'd be in the timeout room. The kid would be acting up, and this kid was punching the wall and, very angry. He was angry all the time. He was just, his biggest emotion was anger. And I just sat there and I was doing the prayer. My eyes were open, but I'm doing it. praying that all my brothers and sisters of the world come to spirituality. The prayer is that all my brothers and sisters, all the people in the world are being filled with love and devotion, and real faith is growing stronger in them. It's a simple prayer, but the energy behind the prayer, again, the words are there, but it becomes energetic at some point. And it's a prayer that all people find the divinity within them. And the kids would settle. It was like this amazing thing would happen. And I'd see their auras. It was a carpeted room, a room that was, the kids would go a timeout room. And sometimes, kids would be in restraints, and then after restraint, they would settle. And they would, calm down and things. But this kid didn't need to be restrained because he wasn't physical. He wasn't physically threatening, but he was really angry. And I started doing the prayer, and he settled down. And he started to cry, and I'd never seen this kid exhibit any of this kind of emotion. And I said to him, what do you want? Like, what do you want out of life? And he said, I just want a family that loves me. And it was like a heartfelt moment, like I felt really bad for this kid, right? And I realized in that moment that I couldn't help these kids. These kids in the treatment center, these were kids who had been sexually abused, and they were, they had acted out. And I would later on get my master's in counseling, and I'd have kids who are, teenage sex offenders. Many of those kids they had parole officers and things like this, right? But in that moment, I realized I couldn't help these kids. Like, what they needed was a family that loved them, because that was so important to the development of a healthy person. In that moment, I said, what I need to do, if I wanted to make the world a better place, was to have a spiritual marriage, marriage with this Sahaj Marg system, and have these souls that were chosen to be in my family, because I had read this stuff in the teachings of the system, and that these kids could be raised in an environment that would make them better than me. Like, they would have an advantage over what I had as parents, and they would grow up in this system, and they would be around this wonderful energy and these teachings, and I could be a better parent, and through that, my kids would make the world a better place because they were better than me, right? What we have now is de-evolution. Like, each generation is worse than the previous generation. And, my ex had been an abuse survivor. Her dad had sexually abused her. She was tried to commit suicide. This is her story. She had tried to commit suicide in college. She was hospitalized. And I think a second attempt at suicide when she confronted her parents over her abuse, and then all these other things, right? And she had, messed up psychology, but she was somebody who was really, smart, top student in her class, went to an Ivy League school, and was, well versed in the Sahaj Marg system. And I thought that part of her would win over the abuse stuff, but it didn't. And our family was, we lived on a farm, and my kids grew up on a farm. They grew up with spiritual teachings, but they grew up with a mom who would have these psychological breakdowns. And, I had very many limitations personally. I had my own dysfunction from my family. And so, it worked out the opposite way. And my kids they all seem to be worse than me. They're all young. Maybe they're not going to be, as far as I know, have a spiritual life. And there are things that it's a disappointment. And I thought we would have this intergenerational family farm where they would support each other, and they would, help each other when they had kids, and they would go out in the world, and they would be better. That they would be better if they had a better childhood, better family, and a better upbringing than I had. And they would, it would be a way that we would move evolution forward, right? Where they would be better than their parents. Like, if each group of people were better than their parents, more spiritual, more saintly, just higher functioning, then humanity would get better. But the opposite is happening. And so it was a huge disappointment and a source of pain, and it still is to whatever extent. But I've had to deal with it. It's the way it went. It's what I have to accept. This is, part of God's plan, and this is the way it went, right? And, there was nothing that I could have done or anybody could have done differently that would have changed this outcome. And I'm not excusing myself or anybody else. It's just, this is the way it was going to be. So going back to what this person says, you have very little compassion to yourself and your failed relationship with you and your own child. To me, this is disheartening, and no spiritual system on earth will help you see how you neglect her spirit even after she's dead. It's sad, man. And so, but, what about my other children that I have a shitty relationship with? Like, it's all of them. Like, I don't have a good relationship with any of them. We're not, our relationship is permanently broken. And, no one else was there. Like people say, you have no idea what goes on in a marriage. Like people, I have my side of the story. My ex has their side of the story. The kids all have their stories. Everyone has their complaints. They all have their, blame and all these things, right? But I had put so much, I don't want to say hope or, energy into the family. I mean, years of changing diapers. There was, 6 kids because my ex had 2 kids before that she from a previous marriage, and I changed 5 kids' diapers for a 10-year period. All the meals I cooked, all the things I did to try to make the kids' birthdays happy, all the trips I took the kids on, all the things that we did, all the positive things, them getting a chance to learn how to milk cows, all the videos that you guys who saw my older videos of my family, having this farming experience, all the talks I had with my kids about life and, the things that I say here, I'm much better at it now. And so there was the good things, but then there was the emotional crises and the emotional breakdowns and the struggle and all of it, right? The poverty and so many bad things. And so, what I did, the investment of my life's energy that I put into this family and the return on that investment, which, with spiritual cleaning aside, which has been I'm very grateful for. It's really a bummer, right? It's a fucking bummer. And I could never express to you any of that, any of these things, right? So for some person to just write this off the cuff like they fucking know me, right? Yeah, I talk a lot about things, but you don't know me. Like, you don't know what's in my heart. You don't know what I've experienced. You don't know what my process was, right? You don't know how great the Sahaj Marg system is. You haven't experienced it. You don't know what it would have been like if I hadn't had the system. But I know I couldn't have endured this thing. I couldn't have gone through it without the system. It would have broken me. Like, it's just, there's no question about it, right? So, like, nothing about these things. You're talking about, like, you're a knower. You don't know anything about it, right? For what value would you write all this fucking drivel? This is what I'm talking about. It's the, whatever emotional butthurtness this person has and their anger or their venom for me is completely not about these things. It's because they're mad at me and they're looking for a way to get at me. And they thought a good way to get at me was to talk about my daughter's suicide and their failed relationship. But it's my whole family. It's more than just that. It's 18 years. It isn't one event where my daughter took LSD and one of her dopey friends gave her a fucking handgun, and no one on planet Earth would ever do that, right? There was a period of time when she was about 12 years old when I realized that her life and her personality and way she was becoming looked like it was, on a disastrous course. And so from that point until she committed suicide sometime in her 20s, I think she was 21. So that was like 9 years of angst and heartache and all these things. Because no one wants to see their kid turn out this way. And for some piece of shit to use this as a weapon against me, right? And again, it's not going to hurt me more than 9 years of watching my child go down this path, and really all my children to some extent, turn out in a way that I just thought they would be better, better than me, better than, just a cut above. And, the disappointment in that and the failure of the family and having to reinvent myself and move on. But I did move on, and the Sahaj Marg system helped me do it. You just learn to live with the pain of it, right? That's all you can do. The pain is always going to be there, but you learn to live with it. It's disheartening to me to see this. To me, this is disheartening, and no spiritual system on earth would help you see how you neglect her spirit even after she's dead. It's sad, man. I don't vibe with your constant bitching either. I don't experience any of this stuff as bitching. I express things that whatever. That is whatever it is. It's the revelations of injustice in the whole that I tune in for. So how do you characterize some things, revelations about injustice, sometimes, and bitching about others, right? Your personal opinions on how you throw everyone under the bus is not heartful or compassionate. Well, I never said it was. Like, I don't justify my mocking of people or the things that I say or not, but I don't think I throw anybody under the bus. Like, I do everything in a light way, and I don't have personal feelings about any of these things. I don't know if he's saying my family or whatever it is. But again, it's just this like this is why these words don't matter. Like, what is this person's opinion? They don't know anything. They don't know me or any of these circumstances. But I'm never saying that I'm not a piece of shit, right? I'm never saying that I was perfect and that I am perfect. Like, I'm not saying any of these things. I'm not saying that I've made it and I'm some great person that doesn't have to change and grow, because I say the exact opposite. Someone on a spiritual path is always evolving, and that's a big part of it. I just got to finish up the rest of this thing. I'm getting tired out here. And just to the whole, in tune with, it's the revelations of injustice in the whole that I tune in for. Your personal opinions of how you throw everyone under the bus is not artful or compassionate. You fail to live what you claim to preach. Like, you don't know anything about that, right? All you know is what I say on the internet. And I've said this before, you need defense mechanisms. Like, you need an edge. And, I have it. Like, there's so much hostility out there on the internet, and I'm dealing with filth every day. I dive into the filth every day, the filth of humanity. So, whatever I need to do to cope with that, I need to, use that, right? Otherwise, I couldn't do this show. And so, it's not an excuse. It's just facts, right? You're a person that's throwing in a bus. You fail to live what you claim to preach. I know you can't see it. Well, I understand the distinction here because I've talked about it so much. I know you can't see it. Most narcissistic personality types can't. I talk about the higher principles in the Sahaj Marg system as something that, all of us would hope to achieve. But I know that we all fall short because we're human beings. So that's not, anything, right? Myself included. But the big problem for me, the thing that I express here that none of you guys really understand, is that the real issue that I have is that, because of the way humanity is and my experience, I'm not willing to devote myself completely to God, every thought I have, every action, all my energy into just doing that work, which I witnessed with the Master Chargy and the previous masters, where they just gave up their personal sovereignty, their personal time to let their minds wander, and they used every ounce of their energy to do God's work. And I've seen that done. And I could do it myself, but I'm just not up for it, based in everything, right? Not that I don't love God and don't want to serve God. It's just I don't want to do it all the time, and I don't, and I would do it for God, not for humanity, right? So that's the thing that I would most need to develop, right? Would be just complete service to God. And I, like I said, complete humility and giving up all of my personal time, my personal choices, my whatever it is, things that I enjoy, and just devote myself completely to God. And I know that such a condition exists because I've witnessed it, like I said. I know you can't see it. Most narcissistic personality types can't. This whole thing is a whine and a complaint about me, like your whole comment, and you can't see it. And you're accusing me of being narcissistic. This is how these things always go, right? Like, this is complete narcissism, that you can't see me as a person that, has their own feelings. When you go to talk to somebody, even if you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, which this person isn't doing, and you have to tell them some tough truths, they don't receive it well. You have to be very delicate. You just don't drop this on a YouTube comment. I mean, if this stuff was true, how devastating it would be for me to read. Like, if I was oblivious to all these things this guy says, like I couldn't see any of these things, and I'm reading it in a comment, and I'm hearing this truth about myself that I can't deal with and I'm not able to see, the reaction to it would not be a positive one. You can't just drop something on somebody like this. I mean, thank God that this person has no ability to read people, because the level of hostility and the level of a lack of compassion towards somebody else and a lack of understanding how human beings work, like, nobody wants to hear shit like this. And when you tell people stuff they don't want to hear, especially when it's true, I mean, thank God this isn't, because, imagine how I would feel if it was, right? Like, what an asshole. Like, you just can't do shit like this. It's a complete immaturity and it's complete narcissism to think that people could receive your brilliance like this and they would just get it and hear it and change themselves. They would have to be a far superior person for you to do it. And if you think you're so much better than me, then why would I be able to absorb all you say and evolve and benefit from it? So what you're just doing is dropping some anger and hatred on me for your own personal satisfaction, which is a fucked up thing. Most narcissistic personality types can't. You're lucky to still be here, Paul. What does that mean, on the internet or in life in general? You will never be my guru, though, and that's the kicker. This is like probably I was debating whether I'd read this or not. I don't want to be your guru or anybody's. I'm not advocating that I'm a guru because this is not what I do. There is no master of the Sahaj Marg system right now because of what's happened with Dodgy, which is a horrible thing. But I can't replace that or be that for anybody. People have said that they wanted me to be that, and I said, you might want me to be your master, but I don't want you as a disciple. But I don't even want this motherfucker as a viewer. Like, I don't want you watching my videos. I don't want any contact with you because of this. This is how you relate to people. Like, how can you get better from this, right? If this is how you socialize, this is how you interact with other people, then what the fuck? Why would I want any part of this? You don't want me as your guru? Like I don't want you, like, as a viewer. I don't want any contact. Like, please go. Whatever little you're getting out of my videos, go do something else because fucking bro, right? I mean, this is how you interact with somebody you don't even know. God help the people that are in your life. But anyways, let me wrap this up. I'll finish this tomorrow. Okay, so today is Saturday, February 8th. In fact, I'm going to go publish the video for this morning. I had waited a day for the other one to sort of people to catch up with the content. I want to continue on with what I was talking about last night. I started this last night. I had all these ideas that I didn't want to lose in sleep. It was a lot of stuff. And I want to reread that comment because it's important to all of these things. But, going back to this idea of words mattering or not, part of why I said this, a big part of it was the stuff that happened with Alex Jones. Alex Jones to me is a shill, and, he's a performance artist, kind of, not a real truth or whatever. But the lawsuit against him and then the lawsuit against Trump, Alex Jones lost what was $1 billion lawsuit, 1.5 billion or something. And then Trump lost a lawsuit to that woman, and that was something like, I don't know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And then Rudy Giuliani's lost his lawsuit. It was $100 million. And it was for all things they said. Alex Jones criticized these people, these families. That was he said things, and then because he said things, it was interpreted that people went and harassed these people. So it was words that he used. But these people, the whole official story was their kids were killed, and they were traumatized by that. But that wasn't, a wrongful death suit is usually around $1 million. Like, a person's life is valued at $1 million. But hurt feelings because of words and emotional suffering was $1 billion, right? So the words were worse than the actions. And I was saying that, there's so much lies and so much bullshit that people say, like everything that's on the internet, almost all of it's deceptive in one way or another. People can't speak the truth if they don't know the truth. So you start off with a baseline of all the indoctrination from your religion, all the bullshit your religion taught you, to all the bullshit you learned in school, and all the bullshit the news media tells you, and all the bullshit your parents tell you because they don't know the truth, and all the advertisement, all the lies that you're told by corporations and things, and all the stuff that you learn to believe and you think is reality is bullshit. And even three-dimensional life is not true. So people are speaking lies, repeating lies that they were indoctrinated with. And then there's the lies that people tell themselves, and then there's the lies that they purposely tell other people. And so how much of the words is actually truth? How much of the words actually have some value? And that's what I was saying, words don't matter. Certainly in terms of these ridiculous lawsuits, that somehow words are worse than actions, that's part of it. But then all the deception, like people don't even know when they're telling the truth. How many things that people say are just worthless things that have no value? And now with the internet, with the social media and people's ability to express themselves, we're saturated with just useless things that are said. and useless things that are said to you by other people trying to hurt your feelings and things like that. And that's some of what I'm talking about here, right? And even when you speak truth, people don't have the ability to hear it, and they make up their own bullshit, right? And this is the case with this comment. So I'm going to read the comment again. And the person who's writing the comment, it could be just lies and whatever, just things that are said to hurt me, like trying to make up things about me that are not true. But let's take that the commenter is sincere, that this is what the commenter sincerely believes. We have no idea, probably isn't the case. But let me read it again. And there's two huge assumptions here that the commenter makes. And I was thinking about this last night, and I'm eager to do this because it's kind of great. And so it says, it's sad for me to see you have so much attachment to a spiritual system than to your own daughter taking her life. There's an assumption there. That's not true. You invest more emotion into whining about spiritual system getting corrupt actually than you actually put into your healing, which the person has no idea what I've done in terms of healing or not, right? My brother, this is something that truly gets under my skin about you. Your spiritual arrogance is off the charts in this respect. Again, just a made-up term, spiritual arrogance. Have you ever heard that before? Right? You get very little compassion to yourself and have failed relationships with your own children. Again, there's no way this person would know what I've done, right? Or not in this area. And I wouldn't frame it like any of these things. Like this is this person's worldview of what's healthy and not, and it's not my worldview. The things that the person would think about, you would do to have a healthy, dealing with loss of a child. To me, this is disheartening, and no spiritual system on earth will help you see how you neglect her spirit even after she's dead. It's sad, man. I don't vibe with your constant bitching either. It's the revelations of injustice in the whole that I tune in for. Your personal opinions and how you throw everyone under the bus is not heartfelt or compassionate. Is not heartfelt or compassionate. You fail to live what you claim to preach. Now, these are the two assumptions. This part right here, you throw everyone under the bus, is not heartfelt or compassionate. You fail to live with what you claim to preach, and I can't see it either. So the first part, and I know you can't see it. Most narcissistic personality types can't. So that's the first assumption, that I am a finished product, that I am claiming to be a finished product of the Sahaj Marg system, right? That I am somehow done and I'm not working on myself and I don't have things to change, which by anybody observing what I'm saying here, anybody listening to what I'm saying would never make that assumption. I've never said I was a finished product. But here's the other assumption. You're lucky to still be here, Paul, which is a fucked up thing to say. What do you mean? I should have been killed already or dead or whatever from all the things that you're saying? Like I don't even understand that as a statement. On YouTube or whatever. You will never be my guru, though. So this is the bigger assumption. And it goes with this first assumption that I just told you. This thing that was said, it's like I'm offering something here. Like the person saying, you will never be my guru, though. Like I said, hey, I want to be your guru. Like, I'm asking you if you want me to be your guru. Like there's like rejecting an offer that I've made, rejecting a proposal that I've given, that I've said, hey, I want to be your guru. No, you'll never be my guru. You understand? Like I haven't said I want you to be my disciple. Instead, I have said the exact opposite. I don't want disciples. I don't want followers. I don't want any of that shit. I've made it clear to everybody in no uncertain terms. There's no way to read into that I want that. Based on all that I am offering to people, which is the same thing I got in terms of the, Gratefulness meditation channel that I've made to offer the services of the Sahaj Marg system, the sittings. And that's all. And it's only because of my debt to my spiritual masters, right? Which, the masters of the Sahaj Marg system and really Master Charji, who was alive when I started the system. He was the master of the system. I clearly have a debt to him. And you guys all benefit from that debt. All the people who do the Sahaj Marg system or do Gratefulness meditation and have heard it from me, and those people who benefit from that and benefit from the teachings, even if you don't do the meditation, but you benefit from what I say here, from the energy, from the, you use the videos to relax and go to sleep, the energy that comes through me, that I'm a conduit for, and the teachings that I've gotten from them and through my spiritual practice. All of you guys who benefit from these things, or insights who enjoy these videos, that you're benefiting from my debt to them, which I have a clear debt, which I am, there's clear gratitude for all that they did for me. And so I am paying it forward. I can't provide it for them. They've already achieved something, right? So they don't need what I have to offer here. But anybody who has assumed that I am saying that I am a finished product of the Sahaj Marg system, that I have mastered myself, that I am a master, and that I want you guys as my disciples, there's no offer there. That's not on the table. That's not something that I'm willing to do. Like, if you don't understand that, I don't, no matter how many different ways I say it, people still think that I'm offering that. I don't want people as my disciples, right? And I'm not a finished product of the system. And so, and if I was like Master Chargy, and the masters themselves, after they're made masters, after they've reached that spiritual pinnacle, they're still evolving. And by the time they died, nobody understands them, because they've reached levels where they have to come down to your level so that you can understand anything. So, like, all of you who have benefited from what I do here, it's because I am willing to, like, go down in the filth and the dirt and the low-level stuff and cover Hollywood and cover politics and things that I used to feel are beneath me. I don't know what I feel now. Like, I thought they were, I had to, when I first realized I had to do this, that I had to dive into Hollywood. That was the big one, because I had to go into Hollywood in the beginning a lot. And that I'm willing to do that work. I'm willing to go into meet you guys all where you're at, and, win an audience based in, my, whatever it is, mocking of people, whatever it is that attracts people to this channel. And through that, impart to people spiritual wisdom, is only because I'm not a finished product, right? If I was a master of the system, I just couldn't do that. Like, I just couldn't go back into I couldn't do it. Like I wouldn't be able to, if I was the end product of the system. And you can see that as I've evolved as a creator here and as a spiritual person, it's harder and harder for me to dive into the abyss and produce content about it, right? The mocking comes, I can make jokes. Like, I'll always be able to do that. But I, have so little interest in it. I had more interest in the beginning, and now, this was back in 2016, 15. I realized that I had to make celebrity videos. I was in Sri Lanka, my family's falling apart, and I knew to make this channel financially viable and to connect with a bigger audience, I had to go where people were. And people were in this gossip world of celebrity culture and, blame and anger and, low level consciousness. And I couldn't just impart spiritual wisdom to people. And that doesn't work anyway, because people have no interest in it, right? And so to go and find people like me, because when I started Sahaj Marg, I had no interest in meditating. I had no interest in spiritual life. I had no interest in Indian culture and gurudom and any of these things. Like, I had to have an experience, a deep spiritual experience in my initial sittings to be able to, well, yeah, I want this. This is what I've always wanted. Like, I had to be convinced in epic fashion, and then convinced over and over again as time went on that this was something that, even though on a surface my ego didn't want it, my soul did. That this was something to it. I wasn't searching for it. I wasn't looking for, like, I want to go to India and meditate. There was never something across my mind, right? That I want to go and, do these things. I was an American, and I had, issues with authority, and, I wasn't seeking God, at least consciously. So certainly on a subconscious level, certainly on a heart level, I was a spiritual seeker, but I didn't know I was a spiritual seeker. And so for people like me, I'm willing to go into the abyss and mix it up in this, gross world of politics and celebrity culture and whatever else the fuck I talk about here. And I care less and less about all those things. But that's where people are. They're not looking for spiritual life, even though many of you are on a soul level. And that's even the problem. You have to convince something that their soul wants, but their ego doesn't. And that's, so I'm willing to dive into this low level of stream of consciousness, low level consciousness, low level, whatever you want to call these things that I cover here, and cover these things. And then in those things impart spiritual wisdom for people to start thinking about, like little, bits of spiritual teachings. I'm willing to do that. And that's, should everyone who benefits from that should appreciate it. And not saying thank you to me, but, being grateful on a heart level, some way of, you could say thank you, but it's more important that you also are, grateful on a heart level, that not just to me, certainly not just to me, but that, God has provided somebody that's willing to do those things, right? I have more to say about this. But in terms of me wanting to be your guru or your master, it doesn't exist. One, I'm not that. So I'm not going to, being working as a person that's a truth teller, right? Doing my best to tell the truth. Again, we all have distorted lenses, and we all have our, things that are preferences. But in all that, I do my best to tell the truth. I'm not purposefully lying to anybody. But in terms of me wanting to be a guru or wanting to be your guru, that doesn't exist. One, I don't care about that. Like, why would I want to be that? Like, I don't have ambition in that area. I don't, you guys are listening to me already. I already have an audience of people listening to me. And that isn't great. Like, that's, I'm not looking for personal relationships or personal service, or I don't want to be worshipped. Does anybody think I would want to be worshipped? Like, why? Who the fuck would want that? Like, it's a weird thing to want, right? I don't want to be adored by people or praised. I don't want to have a bunch of people, like, follow me around like fucking puppy dogs. I'm a loner, and I don't need that. I don't need that to bolster my ego or whatever. I just don't need any of those things. But the more important part is, look at what's happened to spiritual people, saints and spiritual masters and gurus, whatever category they're in. You look at what happened to Jesus, and you look at what happened to Jesus' disciples. I could read you all the things that happened to Jesus' disciples in terms of the way they were tortured and killed. The crucifixion, Jesus got off lucky compared to some of his disciples. So then you look at all the saints that were hung and burned and, were just, killed and or thrown into jail, and all this people who were godly people that the powers decided were a threat, and they hurt those people. So these are all the Christian saints that we know about, right? And so all those people, the people that once loved them and in a sense worshiped them or whatever, followed them, some of them, maybe all of them in some cases, turned on them. You think I would sign up for that shit, right? So this is, again, why words don't matter, because I've made it clear the kind of person that I am. There's hours and hours of content, and I don't want anything to do with anything that results in a relationship like that, where, I don't want to feel resentful. Well, let's get into the Sahaj Marg stuff, because I'll come back to this. So here's the three Sahaj Marg masters. So the first master, Lalaji, he lived into his 50s. He died young and not young in India at that time. His life expectancy was, into his 50s and 60s, whatever it was, in ancient India. He died in. He was born in 1873 and he died in 1931, which would make him 58 years old. And in terms of what he did, it was 100% grassroots. He started in part spiritual training to people. He learned some things from some local people. He lived in northern India, right? His name was Ramchandra. And Babaji's name was also Ramchandra. And he worked as a clerk, and he, was educated, was born in a rich family, and a British Raj took everything his family had. His mother died when he was like a younger person. And he was maybe 10 or 11, I'm not sure. And his dad died shortly after losing everything. And he was a young man married, married at a young age. Like they married when they were like 14 or something. Like that kind of, tribal, whatever it was. And he was out on his own with no money, complete poverty, but he had been educated. He got a job and then worked his way up to having, like a middle class life in rural India, right? And he had these spiritual abilities that he had, there was these people who were called Sufis. They were spiritual element of the Muslim tradition. And there was some, spiritual training he got from these people. These Sufi saints. He was Hindu, so he was, different religion. He grew up as a Hindu. But he transcended his religion like these people did. And then he had these abilities that he just got from his own spiritual practice. And he started to have people over his house, and he would transmit to them and prescribe them various things. So he was a guru of sorts, but no organization. There was no method. There was no cleaning. There was no sittings like we have now in the Sahaj Marg system, or like we had, what we do now in the Gratefullness meditation. There's no method or system. There's no organization. He took no money, got no donations from anybody. And so there was nothing on the material level, right? There was no, ashram to fight over. There wasn't really any books or things to publish. There was he had all these articles he wrote, very hard, things to read unless you're well versed in yogic philosophy and understanding. And, his one book they published, I could understand about a fourth of it maybe. I mean, it was hard to, coming from my background and upbringing. Even with my knowledge of Sahaj Marg, it still was hard to, a lot of words I had to look up, a lot of things I had to, it was not easy reading. So there was nothing on the material level for someone to gain. He died, with a modest amount of whatever. He left his children a house and, whatever it was. And so for 13 years after that, he intercommuned with this guy, Babaji. Babaji was a little, 5'2", small guy, weighed probably a little over 115 pounds. I mean, very slight build guy who was extraordinarily humble, and nobody noticed him. And he'd gone to Lalji's house like 8 times. But after Lalji died, he intercommuned with Babaji and started impart to him spiritual training. And some people got wind of it, and they tried to, these were higher developed spiritual people, psychic abilities and things. And they tried to will Babaji to death and steal his accomplishments, his spiritual accomplishments. And then 13 years after Lalji died, Babaji's preceptor announced that he was Lalji's successor. So Lalji had about 200 people that came to his house that were, Abhyasis, like disciples or whatever. And 5 of them accepted Babaji after a while. And the other 195 people rejected him, and people tried to kill him. So there's 200 people. There's nothing to fight over. And they tried to steal his energy, his powers, his spiritual accomplishments. They were trying to will him to death, and they were trying to, physically kill him, poison him and shit. Murder him. And there was nothing to steal. There was nothing. There was no anything. There was nothing. Like that's, so already Lalji had 5 quality disciples. Out of 200, he had 5 good people, right? And the rest turned out to be pieces of shit. Some of them, their souls were erased permanently from the fucking universe. Their soul energy was just extinguished. Like there was fucking shit that happened on a spiritual level. This was all spiritual shit. There's no material other than the attempts on Babaji's life. And there was, consequences, like fucking severe consequences for these fucking souls who were imparted spiritual training for free, went over to the guy's house, and he gave them, the abilities and things. They developed into spiritual people. Instead of being grateful for what they got, they tried to kill his successor and take his stuff. And there was nothing. This was poor people living in a poor part of northern India, an abstract village. Babaji lived in the neighboring village of Shahjahanpur. So then Babaji became Lalji's successor, and Lalji told him to make there's intercommuning. He's, connecting with him on a spiritual plane of existence. And Babaji started to receive orders from all kinds of different souls and saints, but mostly Lalji, who, was this one sort of, his person. his master. And so he created a mission. He registered it in India in 1945, and then all these other countries. And he created a method. The sittings, he created preceptors that could give these sittings who could act as conduits, all these things. And he got this from connecting with these, the divine hierarchy and lology, and he was instructed to do these things. And so people started to come to Babaji's house. One of them was this guy Charji in 1964. And Charji was a well-versed businessman. He spoke multiple languages already. He was a brilliant person, a student, and he was very effective. He had been Babaji's disciple when he was Patanjali in a past life, and he had been St. Paul with Jesus. So he had already played this role. And he organized the mission. He organized the business aspect. He took donations. He helped build an ashram for Babaji. Babaji built an ashram close to his house. He got Babaji's kids a job. One of them, he got a job. He took care of Babaji's kids and all these things. And he would travel with Babaji, and everybody knew he was Babaji's successor, that Babaji needed a successor. And there's a famous sitting where Babaji transferred his own condition to Charji in an airport in Denmark, where he merged into Charji. So this was, some documented Charji's diary, and, it was a thing. And that didn't happen for me, right? So, like, I know that didn't happen for me. Like, I didn't get some special sitting. And Babaji trained him spiritually and also in teaching and being an example to do the job for years. He from 1964 to 1983, for 20 years, Babaji trained him to be his disciple, his representative, his successor. And so it's a clear thing that happened on a spiritual level first, and then all the other stuff. And I didn't get any of that. So I wasn't, there's no thought of me being a master and trained to take over the system, because I wasn't chosen for that. Gratefully, and I'm grateful for that, right? I feel lucky. There's a saying, there's a teaching, it's better to be the king's friend than to be the king himself. And I really feel that and appreciate that. And so I'd rather be the friend of the king than the king. I have no ambition in this way, and I was lucky enough to not have this happen. But towards the ends of Babaji's life, Babaji's own family, his kids, one of the kids that owed Charji a career, the Charji took care of him. He turned on Charji, and he started to undermine Charji at his job. He started talking shit to Charji's bosses about him, trying to get the guy fired and things, even though this Charji got Babaji's kid the job. They hired hitmen. They tried to kill him. The guy showed up with a gun. They poisoned him, not just Babaji's kids, but other people. And 95% of the people rejected them. This was according to Kamlesh in a talk that he gave. Rejected him. Kamlesh himself, the Charji successor, got a gun, which was hard to do in India. And he was in Gujarati. He drove to Shahjahanpur, where Babaji was house, where Charji was staying. He was driving there with these other guys, and he was going to shoot Charji and kill him. But they couldn't ever find Babaji's house, even though there's like 4 roads in the whole fucking town. And they couldn't find his house, right? They kept on driving around, and they couldn't find it. And at some point, Kamlesh Daji realized this. He was a young man. He was like 18, 19 years old, or 20. That something wasn't right. He got out of the car, but he himself wanted to murder Charji. And then Charji had the lawsuits. He had to fight for 13 years to get the ashram that Babaji had built and get the organization. He had to deal with all this stuff and all these hateful things that were said to him, and all this stuff that had, he went through this fucking hell, which I, read and, was documented in various places. The letters that he went, all the stuff he went through, right? And then after all the stuff, he went through, and then he was accepted, and he took a mission of 5,000 people and spread it around the world, and there's hundreds of thousands of people that were doing the meditation, all claiming to love him and how great he was, and they were all, this is you're my master, and weeping when they left his presence. And then this piece of shit Daji, who, well, first Charji chose his successor, and everybody knew Charji's health was failing, and he was desperate to leave. He wanted to die for years. like he was over life, and there's lots of the suffering and things, and just he was ready to move on, and he needed a successor, and he chose this one guy who his inner circle, these were like businessmen who had total access to Chargy, and they would talk about how grateful they were for him and all these things, and they were totally shitty about him choosing this guy. This guy received death threats. Chargy's successor. He, people in the area, Chargy was Brahmin, and this guy wasn't Brahmin. So the Brahmin people who were all, into their caste, and Chargy was from southern India, and the Brahmins they have their like the elitism, they're elitists. They're teachers and politicians and doctors and gurus, right? They're that kind of, what they do for their living, right? Academic people. And they rejected this guy. They didn't want him. And the guy withdrew. He was a young man. He just couldn't do it. So he said, I can't do it. All the bullshit he had to put up with, and he just wasn't up for the task. And so Chargy's health went south. He went into a coma, and he didn't have a successor. We were all sitting there going, if he didn't have a successor, the mission would fall to shit. Like, it did anyway, but we all, knew without, somebody who was the master of the system couldn't go on, right? And so with 3 years left with his life, he chose this guy, Kamlesh, who Kamlesh himself said Chargy had written his name down and then crumpled up the piece of paper and threw it away. Like he had thought of Kamlesh's potential master, but realized that he wasn't up for the task and chose not to do it. So he had 3 years to prepare Kamlesh, who had been around Chargy for years. And there's some stories out there that Kamlesh and these people kind of forced Chargy's hand because he had to leave somebody. He had to leave somebody behind. And Kamlesh turned out to be a real piece of shit, and he threw Chargy under the bus. And all these people who claimed Chargy was, their master, and they loved him, have watched as Kamlesh has done everything to I've talked about this at length. And so this is what gurus and masters get. We have the whole tradition of Christianity, and how Western people kill their saints. And this was something even Chargy said, right? And then we have what's happened in India, where they worship gurus and masters, and they have a master-disciple relationship. And so why the fuck would I want anything to do with any of that stuff? Why would I insert myself in that position when I wasn't given it in the first place, so I could get a bunch of shit like that? Like from what, people will turn on you and how bad people suck. And every day I look into the internet, I see the way people respond to the comment section, and I see what's going on in the world. Why would I want any of that shit? Like, I have no desire to be your guru, your master. I'm not looking for disciples to stab me in the back and turn on me when that hasn't worked in the past, right? And so what I've been willing to do is be a steward for this energy, these teachings, and disseminate them to the best of my ability, because that's what I've been chosen to do. That's all. That's all there is. This gratefulness meditation. There's no, me having a relationship with any of you. There's no any of these personal things because of all that. So this idea, this person said in the comment section that you're not my guru, bro. You'll never be my guru. I don't even want you as a viewer. Like, I mean, our shit is done. Like, I'm cutting you off. Like, I don't, like we're like just your behavior. Like, and so even with all that I've said about this, even all that I've presented, people still misunderstand what I'm doing. I'm not a finished product. And if I was, I wouldn't be able to dive into where you're at and disseminate the information, the teachings and the energy and things. And so that's the first piece. The second piece, we have all this history of how people who lived spiritual lives and imparted spiritual teaching and training to whatever capacity, people who became saints, people who became spiritual people, and they benefited other people, they were rejected, and people wouldn't even look at their example and try to be like them. They just, they took what they could from them, and they became, whatever. We've seen, killed them, tortured them, denied them, whatever it was, right? Whatever, like, low-level shit that they did. And I saw what Chargy was to people and how much he did for people. Like, how much effort was his, and these people were benefiting from his spiritual this Sahaj Marg system is amazing in terms of what you can achieve, the levels of spiritual evolution you can achieve in one life, or even, multiple lives doing the system. Like it's a shortcut. It's a Hail Mary because of where humanity is to get us out of this circumstance. And even with this incredible gift of the system, people don't want it. It's a flaw in the human structure. Even though your soul is begging for it, your egos, people's egos aren't. The ego problem in human creation is a substantial obstacle. And so, doing more for you won't lead to you doing what you need to do, right? And so I have, done my best to create a YouTube channel with all of the, and then all the things I've said on this channel and other places. But it's up to you to do better. Like then what Charaji expected from you and what Babaji expected from you and what Lalaji expected from you. Because I can't do what they did. I can't carry you. I can't, do what, I can't be for you what they were for everybody, right? And so and I believe that needs to happen. That, for whatever reason, people need to step up. I mean, for every reason. People have to do more for themselves than expecting some guru or master to do it for them. It's a failed model. And if people aren't going to do it, then it fails. So humanity fails. So I don't give a shit. So, it's not my problem. Each person has to do. I care. I want humanity to succeed, but you can't overcompensate for people's inabilities. I'm well aware of that, and not that I'm in this position either way. And so the other part to it is, in the Sahaj Marg tradition, you can reject and leave the guru, which is a big thing because in India, the fake gurus will cast a curse on you or whatever. They scare you to leave. And in the Sahaj Marg tradition, you can quit anytime you want. And there's no repercussions, there's no hostility, there's no ill will, there's no bad feelings. You can walk away from Charaji or Babaji or the system anytime you want without any thought of retribution. In fact, Babaji said he would do his best to find you a more suitable teacher. He would pray and try to arrange a situation where you could find somebody that was better suited to you. Not only was he not going to be mad for all that he gave to you and all the ingratitude you expressed by quitting and all the things that you got that you weren't aware of, he was going to help you find somebody else. That's how generous it is. But he could never reject you. No matter what a piece of shit you turned into be, he could never reject you. The masters always had to be there, and that they were responsible for your spiritual evolution. And even when you were failing, they would pray and blame themselves for your failure. That if you failed, it was a representation of, it was really their failure, and they would blame themselves for your inability to make the right choices and do the right thing, and that's how they were. And so that's not for me. I mean, not in the egotistical level or, whatever my decision making. I don't have the energy for that. Like I'm just wiped out from my own, cleaning my own stuff that I went through, my family stuff, all the things. And just even, the ingratitude my kids have shown, the ingratitude they've shown, or just lack of awareness of all these things, right? And, just that is a disappointment. As a parent, you can't go in with expectations of, you just got to go give of yourself, right? And I did that to the best of my ability. I was okay. Given the circumstances I was under and all the things that I've expressed this in the Journey series for people that understand the story, it was a tough situation for me, and I did okay. I did my best. But I put in work, right? Like I said, I changed diapers for 10 years. I cooked meals for God knows how many years. And, all the energy and time I put into trying to, make the kids happy and do things as a family, and the farm experience they got to have, and, all the things. There's some positive things there and things that I, did for them, altruistically as a parent, like all parents do. Like with good parents, people want to be good parents. They perform tasks and they perform service and they do their best to, raise their children. And, we all are flawed because of we had shitty parents and this, the beastly system and things that break up the family. There's lots of things going against us, but we all struggle to, struggle with the system, and we do our best. And I didn't think about, eventually they'll take care of me or whatever, right? That they'll, whatever, they'll, when they become successful, they'll give me money, like, some of these other, I mean, that's, people have these expectations. And I wanted an intergenerational family farm as part of my vision for my family. And when that was clear that the opposite was going to happen, that the family was going to go their separate ways, like the breaking up of the Fellowship of the Ring, that everyone's going to go in their own direction, and that wasn't going to be a reality. I had to I had to pivot and restart, and and I was wiped out by all the whole fucking thing, right? And that was just my kids, and the way that they think about me, is a real bummer. I mean, the way that they think about me, each one of them, the way that whatever negative feelings they have towards me, and the total lack of gratitude for the things that years and years of whatever I put into. I mean, just being there for them when there's a time where my daughter Anna, was clear that I was getting divorced and we were in India, and the divorce wasn't going to happen for some years, but it was, the marriage was over. And she goes and says to me, would you remarry, mom or my ex if, if knowing what you know now? I forget exactly how she said it, but I've said it, the right way before. But that was the gist of it. And my kids didn't listen to me. They kind of listened to me, but not really. And all of a sudden, all four of them are looking at me like I'm E.F. fucking Hutton from those commercials. And, the truthful answer was, well, there's no way in good conscience I could say yes to that, because everything I knew about her and everything the way it went, but if I didn't marry her, they wouldn't exist. So there's no real answer to that question, right? There's no way that I could answer that question. But of course the answer would be no, because I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't do it again. Like, I would do a better job now, and I would negotiate those things better, but I couldn't be there. Like, I couldn't go through it again. Knowing what I know now, I had to deceive myself. I had to, my lack of awareness of what was going on. Like, now that I know things that I didn't know then, I would be better at doing, that, going through that crisis again, going through that, the trauma again of that, situation. But I couldn't do it now. Like, it's just, I can't do it again, right? And so, then she asked me about would I remarry, and the kids were just like, hanging on me every word. And I said, probably not. And, I don't know. And then they said, why? And I said, and I was planning this, and I said, bitches be crazy. Because I felt it was like an opportunity to make a joke about the whole thing, right? But in terms of all these things, it was something I lived through, and it was difficult, and it was draining, and it was very telling. And, the lack of gratitude and all this stuff. I stayed in the situation in part because of the kids, because I couldn't, in good conscience, leave them alone with somebody who was having the kind of psychological issues that she was having. And it was a sacrifice, like we all sacrifice as parents, and it goes unappreciated. And if your own kids don't get it, I mean, sometimes you have kids who understand and see it. And even if you try to tell them about it, it makes it worse. Like, they just don't want to hear it, right? So, whatever. And so, I have no relationship with them. And, it seems unfair if I think about it, but I'm not a victim because I got, cleaning, and I evolved from the situation. And there was a reason that I was in that situation from past experiences or whatever. And it was the exact right situation for me to evolve. I changed as a person, right? But without the Sahaj Marg system and the teachings about samskaras and all of it, my experience with the system, I couldn't have done it. I would have been successful. I would have ended up bitter and angry and hateful and blaming and all those things. But I was able to evolve from it, from the misery, as a divine blessing, right, as part of the teaching. I was able to take it as coming from God, and I was able to turn it into something good. And all of you who have benefited from this YouTube channel, it's that, it's my ability to do that, and it's the Sahaj Marg system able to pull me through this thing that's allowed for this thing to flow, the energy and the rest of it, right? And so it's a wonderful system. It is something that is worth saving, And here's the thing, going back to some of the things I said earlier. So with all the stuff I just said about the way the guru, or the way the master, not the guru, the master in the Sahaj Marg system, the deal that you is given, that they're there for you no matter what, and you can quit anytime you want. It's a horrible deal for the master of the system, but it has to be that way for the master surrendered to God and is been given this this these tasks, these obligations to elevate humanity. Like there was a system given for one purpose, and that's to bring humanity to a higher level. And humanity has to choose it. Each person individually has to choose it, and we don't. Like I've seen it over and over again. We fail to whatever extent, even the best people in the system. There are people that were in the system. There was all these assholes who were around Chargy. These were successful businessmen. They donated money, and they wanted to be seen. They wanted positions. They wanted, notoriety. They wanted glory, whatever. They had their own, shitty little, some scars, their personality flaws, whatever. They had these issues, and they were good. They were also good. They did work and they did service and they helped out, and we benefited from, their, whatever work that they did. Like some of them, worked for the organization. But they all turned on Chargy in one way or another. They all failed him. And then there was these people who you wouldn't notice them. They were like Babajis. They were people that were working behind the scenes, and they didn't want notoriety. They didn't want people to see them. They just wanted to do the work. They wanted to serve. And there are lots of preceptors like that. I saw a number of them, and they were just saints. And they were, better than me in terms of their commitment. I mean, they were just wonderful people. There's one guy, I stayed at his house. He was an old Indian guy. And my family and I stayed at his house. And I never would have noticed him otherwise. And my ex and I were at his house, and we were like, wow, this guy's a saint. And his wife was, too. Like, they were just these saintly people. And I watched the guy because I know about him. And I seen what kind of person he was. He's just service-oriented. And there's a time Chargy was in, this was in Texas. So we stayed at this guy's house in Texas. And they rented a little, like a little Hindu temple to have group meditation. There's maybe a couple hundred of us. There's a lot of practitioners of the system, a lot of Indian people in Texas. And Chargy arranged for one of the senior preceptors, a full preceptor, to give the sitting. And Chargy was going to go do some things. And he requested everyone take the sitting. And they ordered a catered lunch. These local people, they paid to feed 200 people. And Chargy left, and all these people, against his wishes, followed him. And they didn't do the meditation. And I was this poor guy, this saintly guy, I'm staying at his house, and he's begging people to stay. And all the people are running out, following Chargy, and he's like, no, please stay, we have a lunch coming, and and he's just, pleading with them. And I'm like, I feel so bad for the guy, right? And how shitty all these people are for, not being disciplined enough to do what their master requested them to do. And they just go following him, doing whatever he's doing, all these things. And I saw this, over and over again. And then the way they all turned on him and all these things, right? And so there's these saintly people like that who, don't mock people. They're nice. They're sweeter, kinder people than I am. But this is what you guys got, right? Because if I wasn't the way I was, you wouldn't be able to know about the Sahaj Marg system. I was created, I have these tendencies so I could survive the internet. And I have the capacity to, they couldn't say the things that would be interesting. They couldn't make videos like I make them. They could make things funny, and they couldn't make they don't have an edge, they don't have these things, right? And so people who say, well, look, Paul isn't as spiritual as he thinks he is. I don't think I'm spiritual at all. I don't, have it. I understand that I have a relationship with God, and I have a soul driven, part of my experience that wants to do this, spiritual, this spiritual journey. Like it's there. A seeker of the truth. But I have these other tendencies and qualities that are useful and necessary in my current situation, right? And so, I make good videos. I can be a person on the internet that can, disseminate this information and also make quality content that would bring people, create an audience that people come and they want to see what I have to say. I have insightful things to say, all the things that I have here. And you could try to pick me apart and say, oh, you have this tendency or that tendency. What's wrong with you? These things. Because I'm not a finished product. If I was a finished product, I'd be so far above all of you, that you guys wouldn't understand me and wouldn't want to connect in these things, right? You have to, they need someone to dive into the cesspit. And that's, I was chosen for this work, right? But that's all. Like, this is the work that I do. And that's all that people can expect from me because I'm not willing to do the other things. And I haven't been chosen to do those things. I've been chosen to be a guru or a master. And I don't want to be. Like, it's not like some, out of some sense of humility, I'm not willing to offer myself to do those things. I don't believe in it. Like, I don't believe that, the people, will rise up to it. Some will. There's always some that will rise up to it, but those people can rise up with what's left behind in the gratefulness meditation. Like, you have to be a superstar. You have to do more. Charji and Babaji did too much. Jesus did too much for people. Not that I'm criticizing them. They did, they did because the people wouldn't do for themselves, right? But I'm not doing that. Like, like whatever I do here, whatever stuff that I offer, it's because I owe the system, I owe the masters in the system. And I'm willing to do this work and pass it forward to other people. But don't expect me to do what, do for you what you should be doing for yourself, right? The other thing is that the Sahaj Marg system is, going to take future lives for people. It's very clear that that's the case, that everyone could achieve Laya Vasta, emergence in God, in this life alone. With the system, if they were great, because it's been done before. Lalaji did it, Babaji did it, and Charji did it. 3 people did it, and maybe other people I don't know about. They reached the goal. But the majority of people don't. And that's okay, because they can come back, and they've already, they'll be better next life, because they've had cleaning, their soul has gotten a taste of this. Even the people who just start and go away, even the people who just hear about it and connect with the energy, they're going to come back and do it again in more favorable circumstances where there won't be so many distractions, and the beastly system that pulls people away from their spiritual self, from their soul's path, will no longer exist. And so that's, it's a long-term goal. It may take several lives for people to click in and go to a higher level. And so, just starting is a good, just getting their feet wet, getting into it a little bit is enough for, your soul to incarnate again with more intention and more purposeful commitment to doing the system, right? So that's another thing that the Gratefulness system offers, a long-term introduction to something that's going to take maybe, multiple lives for a person to achieve. But going back to this person's faulty premise and their, silly little comment, right? I mean, aggressive and hostile comment and just, fundamentally dishonest. I never said I was a finished product, and I never once said I wanted to be your guru. Like, you just made that shit up, right? The opposite is the case. I'm aware that I'm not a finished product, and I have no intention of being anybody's fucking guru or master. Like, that's not happening no matter what. Like, that's not an option. No one in their right mind would give me that position, and I'm not willing to do it. And so what I'm willing to do is what I'm doing. And, it's enough. It's enough for me, and it's enough for you. It has to be, right? So, I'm glad to be able to sort of clarify these things. Sometimes, I assume people get things, and maybe they don't. Like, I say things, and, in the context that I'm saying, maybe there's less understanding, and that's what I'm talking about, words failing. Because people will hear what they want to hear. People will make up what they want to hear. They'll change the facts to fit their feelings, to fit their emotions, right? That's a, psychological saying in these various personality disorders and other things. People will rearrange reality to see what they want to see, even people claiming to seek the truth. People will make something up, make you better than you are or make you worse than you are, depending on what they need you to be for them, right? Like, I'm well aware of that condition, the human condition, people's tendency to do such things. But, in terms of clarifying these things, I don't want to be your teacher or your uncle or your, some pseudo father or whatever, or master or guru, any of these things. I'm not looking for relationships in this capacity. I'm not looking to take on the burden of all these things. What I'm doing is passing forward and disseminating the information and the energy and doing the sittings and giving people the opportunity to utilize the system that's been so great for me. And people are free to do it and free to not do it, and none of that concerns me. You don't owe me. Like I said, this woman wrote to me saying she did the heartfulness meditation for me, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Don't do it for me. I don't want you to do it for me, right? I want you to do it for yourself. Like if you see some value in it, there's no obligation here. I mean, there's whatever gratitude you feel and whatever things, in terms of people, continuing to support the channel in whatever way possible. I mean, that's up to you. If you feel the need to do that, you want to see this channel continue, you feel some gratefulness for the, work that I've done here in whatever capacity you've benefited from the teachings or something that I've done there. That's, your decision to contribute in some way or another. That's all. Like, that's all there is here in terms of the relationship. Like, it's me talking to myself and allowing this energy and the information to flow through me, and with the hope that it benefits people. But I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because it's what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is just what I'm supposed to do. Like, this is what I've been made into. This is, I'm just carrying out my destiny to whatever extent, and my debt of gratitude I have for the previous masters of the Sahaj Marg system, that I've benefited from this wonderful system and all of it, and God and the rest of it, right? And that I hope humanity gets its shit together and succeeds. But I don't, I won't hold my breath waiting for that to happen. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.